Women could get higher education in the USA from the middle of the 19th century, in France, in Scandinavian countries, and in Holland by the end of the 19th century. Female listeners have been allowed to attend the University of Zurich since 1840. At that time, the main women's educational institutions were primary schools for girls in Germany. Attendance of the gymnasium was allowed only in exceptional cases, but attendance of lectures in a role of listeners was allowed in universities just in 1986. Before this time, women from Germany went to Zurich to get an education there, where it was allowed. Education in Oxford and Cambridge universities was not permitted for women till the 19th century. First colleges for women were opened in Cambridge in 1896, but in Oxford much later. Women have been able to attend lectures in Oxford since 1878, but they have been able to get degrees just since 1920. But degrees in Cambridge have been awarded to women much later, just starting in 1948. It sounds very sad, as an opportunity to get an education in the Middle Ages was very limited comparing with present days. University of Bologna is one of the oldest universities in Europe. It was one of the places where some educational opportunities were available for women in the Middle Ages in Europe. There, women could not only be taught, but also they could teach. Betticia Gazzardini became a first female professor in Europe, teaching law at the University of Bologna in the 13th century. However, Betticia could not put off all doubts and fears at once concerning the teaching. First years, she taught at home, and also she used screen, not to confuse students. Later, there was one more woman who also taught at the University of Bologna. Dorothea Bacca is an Italian doctor who was in charge of medicine and philosophy departments for more than 40 years. Her father, Giovanni Bacca, was previously in charge of the faculty. Dorothea was offered a high salary to continue her father's work after his death. There are also a lot of Italian women who were educated in the Middle Ages. One of them is Christine de Pizan, who was born in 1364. She's considered to be a French poetess, but she has Italian roots. Her father, Tommaso de Pisano, was a doctor and astrologer at the court of Charles V in France. As the girl grew up in the courtier family, so she had an access to the Library of Louvre. It was one of the biggest libraries in Europe at that time. Christine did not waste her time, and she read a lot. Especially she liked such authors as Boccaccio, Petrarca and Dante. Note that even if women did not have an opportunity to study at university, it would not stop them to study at all, and somebody had to study individually. A girl overcame many losses during her life. After the death of her father, her husband also died because of plague. As a result, Christine was left alone with 3 kids. After she clustered and continued to study historical and philosophical works individually. Modern scientists confirm that her works are the beginning of modern feminism, especially her book named The Book of the City of Ladies. Now let me surprise you. The oldest university which still operates is the University of Al-Qarawiyyin in Fez, Morocco. It was founded in 859 by Fatima al-Fikhri. Fatima was a young lady from rich family who went from Tunisia. After she inherited a fortune from her father, she decided to spend that money for construction of mosque and educational institution, which became the modern University of Al-Qarawiyyin. As time went, the university was developed and it became one of the educational and spiritual center of the Islamic world. Many scholars in UNESCO have claimed it to be the oldest continuously existing university in the world. Old Arabic universities, unlike European tradition, did not give diploma from university's name. The main accent was made on teaching with personal tutor. Only in 1947, University of Al-Qarawiyyin became European University, and it was incorporated into Morocco's modern state university system. And what about the Asian part? The first female university was founded in Seoul almost 120 years ago, or it was more of a school then. Now it is a female university, Sukmyang Women's University, which is a leading university in the country. Its history started in 1906 when it was established by a royal Korean family. It was called Myeongsheng Girls' School. Education for women was not so spread at that time, but the institution aimed to give women an education to improve their social status. It was an important thing for the country, and it was a step to the future. The name of the university came from hieroglyphs Suk and Myeon. It is translated as elegant and bright. Art, liberal arts, engineering, law, business, and music are taught in this university now. The university takes active part in the international foreign exchange programs and partnership. Why did I decide to talk about this university? Because our company, SMAPS Education, organizes summer camp on the university campus, which is close to cultural and historical attractions. If you're interested in sending your kid to the camp in Korea or in any other country, there is a link to our official website with all details below this video. The first institution for higher education for women, Ewha Women's University, was established in 1886 by American missionary Mary F. Scranton, who was supported by the Methodist Episcopal Church. After liberation from the Japanese occupation in 1845 and following development of South Korea in the second part of the 20th century, access of women to education expanded. Overall, Korean education was influenced by American system of education and Americans. Today, Korea has one of the strongest universities of Asia and of the world. You can watch another video about education in Korea. The link will be in the description of this video, or you can just scroll through the videos on this channel. Female education in Japan started from Meiji in the period from 1868 to 1812. It was the first time when country was actively modernized and followed to the West. The first female private higher institution started to appear in 1890, but women got an opportunity to study in national universities only after the Second World War, thanks to new constitution of 1947, which guaranteed equal educational rights for men and women. Women of aristocratic families already had an opportunity to be educated in Japan during Heian era, and they could practice literary work. At that time, a sample of education was a skill of playing an instrument, knowledge of calligraphy, and ability to write poems. At that time, poetry was considered to be an individual language that was spoken by lovers and officials. In feudal Japan, aristocratic women who were wives and daughters of samurais had to stick to Bushido principles. The way of the warrior is a code of samurai. However, formal education for women was limited. They were taught skills of menage, etiquette, and traditional arts. They had to know tea ceremony, calligraphy, and to make ikebana. Some aristocratic women, especially from imperial court, were involved in poetic society. They made their contribution to the development of classic Japanese literature. One of them is Murasaki Shikibu, who's the author of The Tale of Genji. Nobody knows the real name of Murasaki, but this nickname appeared from the name of her novel's main character. It was a beloved woman of a prince named Murasaki. Shikibu is the job title of her father, who was aristocrat and who was listed in the Minister of Palace Ceremonies. But there is not much information about the writer, and it was taken mainly from her diary. The girl demonstrated a big interest in education in the childhood. She learned to write and read, learned Chinese, as at that time it was an indicator of male erudition. The first educational institutions for women was opened in China at the end of the 19th and the beginning of the 20th century. Nanjing University opened its doors for women in 1920. When Communistic Party of China came in the authority in 1949, then a policy of equal rights of genders was declared. It contributed to greater access of women to education at all levels, including higher education. Very often aristocratic women, especially from noble class, were educated within their families in Imperial China. As a rule, their education was focused on principles of Confucianism, including moralities, reverence, poetry, and calligraphy. Some aristocratic women, especially from royal families, were educated by private tutors or attended exclusive schools. In many parts of Asia, social norms and traditions limited access of women to the formal education. But anyway, there were exceptions and specific forms of education for women in different cultures. Education was always valued in traditional Chinese society based on Confucian principles, but it was mainly focused on men who were destined for government service. Women were taught at home under the authority of their parents, focusing on skills which were considered to be more suitable for their roles in the family: reading, writing, housekeeping, and studying of classical works about feminine virtues. In ancient India, educational skills for women varied based on their caste and regional customs before and in the period of the Middle Ages. In some cases, women from higher castes could get an education, especially in religious and philosophical fields. Aristocratic women, especially from higher castes, had an access to education in their families in medieval India. Their education usually included the study of Sanskrit literature, music, dances, religious texts, and etiquette. Some women from royal families were eminent scientists and poets on their own, and thus contributed to the cultural and intellectual life of their communities. One of the notable examples is Akka Mahadevi, who was a mystical poet and philosopher from Karnataka in the 12th century. Women also had an access to education in the Islamic societies of the Middle East and Central Asia, especially in religious sciences. Religious schools and other educational institutions sometimes provided studying for women. There were cases where women became scientists and teachers. For example, aristocratic women were often got education at the royal court from private teachers in medieval Persia. Special focus in their education was in literature, poetry, music, calligraphy, and arts. Thank you for watching. If you liked this topic, please do not forget to like this video. And if you're interested in studying abroad, please check the description. There you'll find all the useful links.